Okay, yes, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Rugby Muscle Podcast. I'm host, as always, TJ, and today I am honored to be joined by my buddy Fraser Murray, who is the head of performance at Biella Bears Rugby in Italy. He is a strength and conditioning coach. He also owns rugbystrengthandconditioning.com, and he's an all-around, really good conversation, really good guy to have a chat with. Because he's open-minded and he's constantly looking. I think you would call him a scientist because he contributes to the journals, the evidence, with some studies that he runs through his team. He's very well open-minded, but he also gets the aspect of coaching that is coaching. He's a very personable guy, and you see that in the answers that he gives and the conversation that we have in today's podcast. There is a part of this podcast, I must warn you, where I have to switch from this room here to another room closer to the Wi-Fi router just so that we can continue on our conversation. If you're listening to this on Spotify, that probably isn't going to make any difference to this podcast. I just thought I would clarify it here because it is a bit weird. If you are listening on Spotify, please do me a quick favor. Hit those three dots. Give us a 5-star review. Really makes a big difference to this podcast. Helps this spread out. I know I missed a couple weeks there with these interviews, but we are getting them back on. I'm really excited for the interviews that we've got to come, the episodes, and the information that is coming your way. And if you can just show your appreciation by taking a few seconds, hitting those three dots, giving us a 5-star review, it will mean the world to me. Of course, if you're watching on YouTube, thumbs up, subscribe, and ask any questions. You can do this on Spotify and YouTube. Ask any questions for any future podcast by hitting the three dots on Spotify and responding to that comment section there, or in YouTube, obviously, in the comment section below. If you want to work with Rugby Muscle, the links will be in the description below, as well as a link to the free Skool group that will give you early access to these podcasts and access to ask questions to any future guests that we have lined up. All right, that's the intro done. I'm putting it in and making a concerted effort because it does make a huge difference. Thank you so much for everyone that leaves a review, leaves a comment, subscribes, supports Rugby Muscle in whatever way you do support. It really does mean the world. Now, let's get into this awesome conversation with Fraser Murray. So we'll just get straight into it and we'll catch up as we go, if you don't mind.
Yep.
For the people that haven't listened to a previous podcast with you, they have just listened to my intro, but I'm just singing your praises in your intro, but I'm not being overly descriptive. So what would you use in a one-sentence phrase to describe yourself and what you do?
To describe what I do, probably is the easier way to go about it. So I'm Fraser. I'm the strength and conditioning coach for Biella Rugby Club here in Italy. I've been here in Italy for 6 years now, and that kind of sums it up.
Nice, easy. But you also do you still do the online coaching with, you have rugbystrengthandconditioning.com, you have Coach FMT, YouTube and Instagram. So
Yeah.
how's that going?
So, yeah, I guess you can see from my self introduction there. I'm not the best at pushing that, I suppose. It's something that I have, yeah, rugbystrengthandconditioning.com. So hopefully people, can get good information if they're trying to prepare for rugby games and all things related to the athletic preparation of rugby at rugbystrengthandconditioning.com. But it's definitely, my purpose, the full my full time is obviously working as a strength and conditioning coach with the team, which is what I love to do. And if I can, expand my reach a little bit through YouTube, Coach FMT, and obviously rugbystrengthandconditioning.com, then that's amazing. I've had some really positive experiences with engaging with people from that. And TJ, as you'll know, being online, you also have some experiences that just kind of make you laugh. So in a way that the internet is, and everyone's got a really, really, really strong opinion on various different things, which is often fun to engage with. Obviously, if we're talking about anything other than strength and conditioning, everything that I've studied and I'm qualified in and have years of experience in. If we're talking about anything else than that, politics or anything else, then I'm quite cautious with my opinion because I know I'm not an expert. But the internet doesn't seem to be so much like that. You can have someone who's doing whatever profession just jump in and tell you about various different things. So yeah, it's the internet's a double-edged sword, but overall, very positive experience. Engaging with people that I otherwise wouldn't be able to.
100%. It's one of those things where I think because you have seen the mistakes that people do with their strength and conditioning, maybe even yourself did, before you had the experience and the qualifications, etc. You see the mistakes that people make, and you think, well, I don't want to be that person in another area. Because it's so easy it's so easy for all information to get out. So that also by default means it's so easy for bad information to get out. And unfortunately, the way the internet and the algorithms and such work is like the best information isn't rewarded because there's no real way for algorithms to audit what is good information, what is bad. They just know what is popular, and what is going to be popular isn't necessarily going to be what works,
Absolutely. I think, YouTube's for me, a fantastic resource for learning and for other things. Obviously people are looking at my channel and learning things about rugby strength and conditioning, but I use YouTube as well for learning about various different topics, obviously as well as other resources. But I think it's I think it's great the amount of information you can get. But the thing is, kind of like you're saying there, you just got to sift through and see, what you perceive as good and useful information, and can you action it? And that's kind of what I try to provide in every video. I'm trying to think, okay, someone watches this video, like can they go away and action something? Because that's what I look for when I'm watching on various topics. I'll be like, right, cool. Can I implement that? Was that just me wasting 10 minutes of my time, or did that person there, did that YouTuber give me something that, hey, I might go away and try that and see how it goes. So yeah, it's something I keep in mind. But
Yeah.
there's been some funny stories. Don't know if we're gonna get into it on this podcast, but yeah, it's definitely an experience, sort of putting yourself online and allowing people to see your work and to enjoy it or criticize it or whatever. It's it's certainly interesting.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, even like this podcast, right? I've got a little fancy light behind me. I don't know how much that adds really to the experience of this podcast. But at the end of the day, like, it goes both ways. Like, you want to make sure that the experience for the listener, so hopefully you listener listen to this now, is enjoying this experience. But you also have to have some sort of nuanced discussion, because like I think if you look at like people like knees over toes guy, like the reason this guy is so successful is because all he's given is direct. Like all of his videos are like direct action. You have this, do this, just do this. And there's so much nuance to it, which so he pisses off, strength and conditioning coaches, he pisses off PTs, he pisses off everyone except for the people that he gets results. And then there are a bunch of people that he doesn't get results with because it's too instructional. He doesn't get the nuance, but he's sending a message that people want to hear. Whereas I think a lot of, especially strength and conditioning, the amount of different avenues that you can take, let alone the ways to tick those boxes, is so huge that we have to have nuance in this discussion, which then makes for sometimes like a less enjoyable or actionable video. Which I agree with you that you always want people to leave watching, having consumed your content, distinctly better off than beforehand, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the idea. You've lost your cool backlighting.
Yeah, I know. Just as I was talking about it, how ironic that I've had to move like directly next to my router to make sure this bloody works. But this is an audio podcast anyway, so yeah, I don't think I think with all podcasts that are on YouTube, I don't know who sits and just watches them like two people just chatting. I think it's background anyways, right?
Yeah, I reckon so, man. I reckon so.
So as long as I done the intro with the backlight. When people first watched, they've all got the good impression. So anyway, where were we? So with your stuff that you're doing with rugbystrengthandconditioning.com and the YouTube, etc., did you start that out as just as a passion project, just to get your coaching information out there to sort of leave your mark in the industry? Or because, no offense, but it doesn't seem, just judging by the start of this conversation, doesn't seem like it's something that you've come into thinking, right, this is a business, this is why I'm going to make a shit ton of money.
No offense taken, because you're absolutely right. No, I mean if we start with Coach FMT, the YouTube channel, that was just honestly, I think I started that in like 2009, but it was literally just a place where I'm just gonna upload some videos of me lifting. Like that. That's what it was. I didn't really. It was more like a personal YouTube channel, I suppose. And then I remember I did a video at university, like just a basic sort of gym instructor type video, like, oh, this is what was it? Turkish get up it was. And yeah, I was breaking that down. And then I just kind of left it. Like it didn't really serve a purpose. And then, when COVID hit and we were all kind of housebound for a while, I was watching, like many people, I was watching a lot of YouTube, and the idea arrived, you know, with my channel. I thought, well, why don't I put out information like all these other people are doing? I guess what it is you can go a whole lifetime, I reckon, and not feel like you are an expert enough to share your opinion with the masses. And and I was digesting really good information from various resources like we talked about, but YouTube is one of them. Some for entertainment, some for passing the time entertainment, but definitely I've learned a lot from YouTube, not about strength and conditioning, you understand, but about other topics. However, there are now full lectures on YouTube from, like, if you go to the NSCA channel, you can hear various different professors talking about, getting free lectures, which is amazing. Anyways, it was there that I decided, look, if I don't feel ready now to share it with 2 degrees and years of experience, and registered with the governing bodies in America, the UK, if I don't feel like I'm ready to share now, I'm never going to feel ready. So just like, what's a good YouTube video? What does that look like from various different topics? And then just make one about how to get fit for rugby. So that's kind of what I did. And then, I wanted to see if I could keep sharing knowledge that people would find engaging, and I gave myself a little target on that, and I made that target, and then again gave myself another target with the YouTube channel, and that's kind of where I'm going with it. So yeah, it's not like with rugbystrengthandconditioning.com. Again, you can go there, you can get some good information, research-based information, and from my experience, all things athletic preparation for rugby. It's not something I woke up and decided, okay, we're going to do a 3-year business plan. This is going to be in 3 years, I'm going to transition out of coaching. I'm going to coach only online. I really, really like coaching, following a team for the season, being with Biella Rugby Club is great. And I really enjoy that. So I don't know if I could. I don't know if I could go fully online if I put down a plan. And I know it's a very hard thing to do, but also certainly for right now, I wouldn't want to. I'm really happy to share the information, when I have time. And recently, my YouTube channel, for example, I've had less time because we're really busy with preseason, and I've got 2 kids, and I feel a little bit guilty about that because I do want to, post regularly, but I'm also like, let's calm down, okay? I'd rather make a good video and take the time to make a good video than put out nonsense. So, I don't think I've posted a YouTube video in two months or something. It's quite bad when I say it like that. But yeah, so it's definitely not a plan to move fully online, but if I can do just a little bit of that and keep that ticking over, and review things every few years, then yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Well, that's also kind of the beauty of YouTube. The beauty and the bad part of YouTube is that well, unless you go and delete it, everything stays on there forever as well. So it's good. It's really
Hmm.
more searchable. It's not like the Instagrams, or I don't know how TikTok works, but yeah, Instagram where
Are you
it's
not
got
on
to be,
TikTok?
mate. No,
No,
I'm 35.
neither am I.
What am
Neither am I.
I going to be doing on TikTok? I don't understand what, like, TikTok just seems like everything I don't like about Instagram,
Hmm.
and maybe even worse. I don't understand like how it is anything other than just trash, wasting your time whilst you're on the toilet type of stuff, which is fine. But then how do you, like, no? Anyway, rant. Let's
Right.
not go into old man ranting here. Let's just say about the YouTube. Everything's there searchable. So like I've put stuff on, and very similar to you, in fact, with like how I wanted to share mine. Obviously, mine is to promote my business. It is primarily, but at the end of the day, I don't want to. I want to just put out good information because it's good information, and then let that trickle down into the business. There are other ways to, to run a business other than putting out just uh, constant content. So I want to make sure I did that. And so when I look back on some of my stuff, there are some things. So sometimes there's like my YouTube's been going for like 10 years
Hmm.
at this point, or something close to that, maybe. Like, and again, before it was just my own training, some ideas on what I would do, some ideas on what I would eat, just stuff that I saw other people do, and I just document. And then I now look back and see, oh, okay, that was actually really good. And then some things I look back and say, maybe I could have done that better, but it's still not. I don't look at it back on anything and say, oh, that was absolutely terrible, which is a good thing. And then it
Hmm.
was only just before COVID where I thought, okay, I need to actually, like, rather than just regurgitate information that everyone else has told me and just um sort of copy everyone else's ideas, I want to come out with like a few of like really my own ideas. And that's where it sort of cemented that it is a good place to actually contribute your own voice and not just um repeat what everyone else puts out. And you're in YouTube, it doesn't drag forever necessarily, but it does allow for a lot more nuance, a lot more in-depth learning. I don't think as good of a platform as Instagram can be, and how many people are on that, and how long a time people spend on that, I don't think that is a good, and obviously TikTok goes in with this, is a good
Hmm.
platform to really get quality information that you can actually take action on. I
No,
don't know if you
yeah, I
agree
mean,
with that.
yeah, totally. I guess it's just for engaging. Um,
Which there's nothing
it's
wrong with. Inspiration, little hit bits, but
yeah,
I think that always has to lead to something else in order for it to be really productive.
yeah, absolutely. I think YouTube's the one that people, have seen a bit of your stuff and they can go there and get into, full detail. 40 minute, 60-minute videos, 10-minute videos, you get a lot more out of them than you would, a 10-second clip of someone squatting, which, again, like you say, is necessary to capture attention if that does capture your attention. But yeah, definitely, I'm a fan of YouTube. I use YouTube myself, and obviously put up content that I hope people find helpful, and it's been good to direct people to my programs. But as you say, it's not not my main. Definitely not a, how would you describe it? A businessman. I'm more of a strength and conditioning coach, and I've got that running alongside what I'm doing here at Biella.
Yeah. So let's get into that then. So
Mm.
you mentioned having juggling two kids, the preseason that you're just into. I suspect this is pretty full on for you right now. What are you doing with the? Let's go with the boys in Biella, not uh, family life for now. What do you got going with those guys at the minute?
Yeah, so we're in training as we always do. We've got a new coach that's arrived this season, a forwards coach, not a new head coach. But so really just kind of integrating him. Great coach, seems like a great guy, great coach, lots of knowledge, and just kind of he's familiarizing himself with Biella, and bringing his own ideas in and getting to know the boys, and so making sure there's time for that, getting to understand our strengths and weaknesses historically. Obviously things might change um, when he puts his stamp on things, But yeah, so that's one thing that's been happening, and having conversations about what we want to do next year, what do we want to change, what worked well, why did we do things a certain way. So it's really good when a new coach comes in with lots of good ideas, a very an experienced coach, a good coach, and it also like, well, hey, why did you look at that metric and why were you doing that? You kind of, if you haven't already reflected on the program, someone might overturn a rock that you just sort of accepted was there. So that's been really useful. In terms of training the guys, they're in just 4 times a week just now. We go into our sort of phase 2 preseason in August, 19th of August. We start our first game is the 12th or 13th of October. That's our first league game. So what we're doing now is almost bonus work. We've got our guys into different groups based on what adaptations we're looking for, and yeah, they're working away. They're working well.
I can imagine it's like a slow build into the preseason, even though there's the excitement of the new coach, which is like kind of how you want it to be. Because a lot of people approach preseason and they think day one, we've got to hit it as hard as possible. And then by the time the season rolls around, you're kind of in a hole already.
Yeah, absolutely. We've gone, off season for a month, so just completely off. There's a program that guys can follow remotely just to not completely detrain everything, but definitely taking time off to relax mentally. Then we hit a 4-week block, and we hit it pretty hard. But again, like you say, just gradually building the intensity, starting off with medium volume, then increasing the volume, and then building the intensity. After those 4 weeks, we give the players like a complete week off again, just to allow those adaptations to occur. And then we come in for another 4 weeks, and pick up from where we left off in week 4. So the guys are coming in, fresh, recovered from that week off. Maybe they went away, maybe they didn't. I certainly did. I went down south of Biella, went to the sea. And yeah, we're pushing again right now. We're in week 6, so we're at that point where things are getting really pretty tough. And we've got up to week 8, and it'll all be fine because we'll finish with an all-you-can-eat pizza on the Friday, on the Friday after a yo-yo test. But yeah, so the boys are working hard, and after that 8-week period, again, we give them 2 weeks off, and we start a whole 8-week block again, and again, just build it slowly. But we're always building on the previous work. So when we come into that second phase of preseason, that's when rugby goes full boona in terms of, there's rugby, every day, twice a day, every day. Not twice a day, every day, but sometimes twice a day, and certainly pretty much every day. We usually have Wednesdays off, much like most rugby teams around the world, to be fair. So it's getting all the general prep work done now that is going to allow people to flourish in that period, and also sort of make sure we're doing more when it does come to, say, the conditioning stuff. It's more game based or situation based. We're doing conditioning games now, but general conditioning games, various constraints on touch, for example. Obviously, contact. The guys are doing a little bit of contact conditioning in this block, but obviously, we'll be going in and really building on that in the second block, which affects the gym. So it's been great in this period because it's kind of like, it's you can do a lot more in terms of gymming on field, and everything sort of, the physical preparation is probably, it's the priority for most. When we come into that rugby block, it's like, okay, now we're really integrating everything we need to do. If we have new systems we want to use, new connections with new teammates, etc. So I have to say, every phase is exciting. I'm really excited to start. I'm enjoying where we are now and seeing the guys work hard on their tempo runs last night, and we're different things. But I'm also really excited about the next block that comes in. We'll be doing a little bit of research on Flywheel technology as well. So that's another thing that I'm excited to understand how that unfolds.
I want to get into that in a bit, but first I want to state that, like, it is, or just sort of carry on from what you're saying as far as like the preseason. It sounds like what you're doing is continually finding ways to sort of build, which is like fun. and again, each new block gets exciting and they're short enough that it's kind of how I like to sort of structure block periodization as well. It's like you sort of lay a foundation in, and then that foundation then supports whatever's going on in the next block. And by the time you're finished in one block, you're pretty much at the end of it anyway, and you're getting mentally, physically, the fatigue is coming up, but you can see that light at the end of the tunnel. And by the time it just gets a little bit too much time, you get time off, and you get to come back sort of mentally, physically refreshed, ready to hit something new. But because you've laid that foundation in the previous block, you're now much fitter or conditioned, more prepared, and then you're ready to move on to the next one. What I like is that the way you're structuring this preseason, it's like you're spending a good period of time laying that foundation, knowing that when it comes to in season, now that foundation, its job, just like in any building, is to actually like keep that structure together, to hold everything else in place. It's to support. It's not to, you're not spending preseason thinking, okay, let's really push you and redline you hard in your conditioning to, make training harder. No, you want the best quality rugby training that you possibly can. So whilst conditioning can be the priority, the other stuff can sort of take a little bit of a back seat, but once you're in season, that's never going to be the case, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of there's two things that were popping in my head there when you were talking. The first thing is, making sure the guys understand, and it's not that everyone, when we have people come into the squad, especially in that phase two, that first week they want to prove themselves. They want more work. They're asking me for more things, and it's just explaining that accumulation of fatigue that comes over the weeks, and explaining why we want you off this week, why we want you up this week, because it's not that we can get to like week 3 and we've got various things planned on field, and then you can say, I'm not, I'm not feeling it. I need a day off, or that's not how it works. So, if week 1 or week 2 or whatever it is, it feels like you could push more. That's good, because we don't want any spikes in the data. We don't want, you could come in, kill yourself on like right now we're doing tempo runs. You could come in and do 5 sets of 10, 100 meters, whatever. You could get that workout done, but where do you go from there? So it's definitely important, and that's something I say in week 1 of the guys. It's like this might seem like you're leaving the gym and you're feeling good and you could do more, but that's because you're coming back in tonight and you're having to do this for rugby. And I know what that session looks like. I know how many accelerations you'll do. I know or the target accelerations that you should do. I know how the high speed running targets. So we want you to feel fresh now. I'm really happy about that. Go away, eat, come back, and we'll see you tonight. So it's definitely important, I think, to communicate the overall plan with guys, why you're doing what you're doing, and being open to have wiggle room within that for players. But yeah, it's definitely important to communicate that, sure.
You said you had a second thought?
Yes, I did, and it's gone.
I thought that might be the case. Well, that's okay, because I want to piggyback off the data that you said that you're sort of both collecting and preparing ahead of time. So I'm assuming, you know as well as the guys do what's going on as far as their fatigue and sort of load is concerned. What do you use to measure that, and how in depth do you go versus how sort of autonomous do you do you leave it up to the players themselves?
Look, we track things. Obviously, we have the GPS, we have targets for the sessions, and outputs that we want the guys to get to. In terms of fatigue monitoring, that's done like a 360, and I've just stuck with one thing at the other, and I'll tell you in a second. I used to fatigue monitoring was what type of fatigue are you monitoring? You're monitoring central fatigue or neuromuscular, or muscular fatigue, and there was physiological tests that players would do, and then it was discovered that, well, instead of doing these tests, it's easier to just track mood, because actually, they're so heavily correlated. If someone has a mood of X, then it shows that if we did a test on the physiology, then yeah, both would be down. So we'll just do mood tests. But I just go with what I think we maybe talked about this last time. Check in on the boys when they come in the morning. Hey, how are you? Did you sleep last night? What did you have for breakfast? Did you have your coffee this morning? Just conversations every time before we train. Now we have a weekly check-in and we're sort of review. Like I said, a new coach came in, and we have some new equipment as well, so that changes what we can do. So we've got weekly monitoring set up different from, or we will implement that differently from last year. So we're going to be looking at CMJ, RSI, and mid-thigh pull. So again, I'm excited to be able to get that sort of weekly monitoring done, as opposed to, having to do it a bit sporadically because of equipment issues, etc., or having to do things that maybe, is this really giving us, is this really, the validity of this, is this, can I use this information and tell it to the coach? So in terms of mood and things like that, it's really conversational, and if a guy's got something going on outside of his life, that's something that may or may not come up in our weekly meeting as coaches. Like, hey, look, this guy's he was a bit underperforming today, but that's because he's just broke up with his missus. Like, it's a tough time. What do we want out from him for this week? What does this look like? What's our behaviour as coaches going to be around him? Is he involved in the starting squad? Like, so although you might be missing a big Excel sheet of that guy had 7 hours sleep of medium quality, I think you get more from it. And also, it's so valuable to have players feel like they can come and speak to you and tell you things, and kind of that's the goal. Now in a squad of 40, you're going to have varying levels of rapport with people. I mean, that's life, isn't it? But the goal is that everyone can feel free to come up and say, Fraser, I'm freaking flying just now. This is what's going on. Like, you can tell when someone's kind of buzzing. I'm going back to a conversation of last night with a young player. We had a joke, an internal joke, which I shouldn't share here. But and then you have the other players that are maybe running a bit low, and it takes you, that maybe they don't give you the full information that morning when you're checking in. But as you follow through, and maybe some other boys give you a nudge that, hey, look, this happened this week. This guy's not because of this, it's because of this. You're going, right, okay. And it just allows you to know when to push, when to pull a little bit in the psychology now. Not a psychologist, but I do, I work with people, and like yourself, coaches, we have to be, gauging what's in front of us and people person as much as we can. If you ask me under 18s though, like, my face is like, right, do that. What did you eat today? Did you eat breakfast? Boom. So I'm very different in front of like unders to seniors. I'm looking after the under 18s this summer, and then they'll go back with their coach. But yes, just stop me, mate, because I've gone on a big tangent and I can't remember the first question.
It's all good. No, I was just thinking about, like, when you're talking about it, conversation, like, this is really, to me, the biggest value of, like, actually coaching, right? Like, there's a reason Biella or any team, or Biella for you, and they employ you rather than like just hire a program or outsource it, even from, like, because you could, I imagine, like, be able to source like an in-depth, data-driven preseason program for the optimal outputs from the highest rated strength and conditioning coach in the world, and that's going on data, and that would just, it would still in theory give you as positive an outcome as or in a theory, as having a coach such as yourself. But the fact is that we're, players are people, and we're not just computers with data and everything else. We're like you have emotions, and emotions change how emotions, feelings, all of that, like, that factors into how you play. It's not just how much you lift, or it's how you feel when you're lifting, it's how you express yourself, and that can also have a factor in as well, because like you get numerous instances of people, power lifters and stories like that, where they've had a huge bender and then woke up the next day and hit a PR in the weight room. Data does not explain that. There is no way you can explain that, but it's a fact. And I think having the conversations is one thing. Getting the data is another thing, and there's obviously a combination, and probably like a huge, well, not probably, there is a huge correlation when it comes to this stuff. So more often than not, when I see the data, it just confirms, like, if I'm doing it for myself, or if I'm doing it for someone I'm working with in person, or we're doing it post the fact with someone that I'm working with online. The data basically tells me what I already know from having a chat with the person. But where we can lose this as individuals, as athletes, is you don't have that conversation with yourself. You look at your program, you say, oh, okay, I've got to do that today. And if you're feeling like shit, well, you're thinking, well, if I don't do this, I'm a complete wuss. I'm backing out. I'm being soft. I'm never going to make it. And so that's obviously not how it works. And like, that's where the data potentially is quite useful. But if you've got someone that is having that conversation, prompting that, like, like you say, sometimes the first time you talk to someone and you say, how you doing? They're like, yeah, I'm all right. Yeah. And then, they go about and but that's genuinely what they're telling themselves. And so it takes a level of introspection to actually figure out how you're feeling. And so that's where data can come in handy. But again, as you say, it's I think, like, we're quite intuitive, especially as athletes. So as long as we can coax that out, how someone feels is probably all the data that you kind of need.
Yeah, look, I mean, two things I'll say there. First of all, gauge sets. So remind me about that. But also,
I was going to say, don't forget the second thing this time.
Yeah, the gauge sets. But also data, obviously super important. Like, the advantage that we have at Biella is we're, a small organization in terms of, we're not Ireland Rugby, England Rugby, we're not, insert whatever team. And so we can get things out really quickly. That's the advantage of being small. We can implement things quickly. We can adjust things very quickly. Whereas, and we do collect lots of data, but very careful about what data we collect, so that, is it something that we're looking at? Is it implementable, or is it something that's going to, like, when I reflect back on things in 6 months' time, will I be able to look at things retrospectively and go, that intervention there wasn't great because of that. However, for totally necessary for your England Rugby or whatever large organization of pro teams, because you've got so many heads in the room, in terms of so many conversations to have, and you need to have, perhaps metrics also make things easier to manage, in terms of, this guy's got a bit of a niggly something knee. All right, what did he score on his isometric hold there? Well, actually, he's still green there. He only gets pain when he runs, so we've checked it, and he should be fine for today's session. So that sort of thing is really important. Whereas in a smaller organization like Biella Rugby, there's like 2 or 3 conversations to be had, and it's me that's implementing it. It's not someone else that's out there doing it. So that's, yes, we agree that data is super important, and it's just, there's obviously going to be different levels of what's needed based on the level of organization, I suppose. But again, being a small organization, it means that you can do things differently from, a squad that's got 70, whatever Premiership rugby team, 70 players. They've got to sort of like manage things quickly, and the conversation's got to be fast in the morning. Gauge sets, yes. So I think you just reminded me, when you were saying that there, that sometimes as an athlete, you're looking at your program, and maybe you don't have a coach because your coach is an online coach, and there's a lot of great online coaches out there. And one of the things that I say to my guys is, and one of the things I use when I'm training, the guys at Biella Rugby Club, to understand if they're ready, and say we're not using the Vitruve velocity-based training that day for whatever reason. When they get to their gauge set, when they get to their percentage, whatever it is, if it's 70%, if it's 120 kilogram squat, and they don't perform it how it should be performed in terms of the speed that I know that they should be using on that, I'll ask them to do it again. And we'll have a conversation about, well, today you're supposed to go up to 180 for three and do three sets of three at 180. Based on that 120, you look tired, man. Like, what's going on? And they'll be like, oh no, I was just, oh yeah, okay, well, I'll do it properly, Fraser. Or sometimes it's like, my back's just tightened up from last night. You know, we're doing the rocks in the jackal position. I got caught, so I'm feeling a bit niggly. I was like, okay, look, let's do this mobility drill. Let's go back into 120. If it's still feeling a bit niggly, let's push that today and get you on the Bulgarians. So that's something I think that people listening and they're training themselves or they're training with an online coach, absolutely have a number in your head before you go up into your 80% or whatever strength set you're doing, and whether it's whatever it is. Let's stay with the 120 squat example and use that to determine what your state is for the day. And if it feels terrible and it feels like the world's caving down on you with that 120 that normally flies up, use that to just feedback to your coach, whatever you use to communicate, and on the fly just adjust it yourself and let your coach know, hey, today I stuck with 140 for whatever because my 120 felt like absolute, it felt terrible. And any good coach is going to be like, you made the right call. Let's adjust your program here and the check-in and off we go.
I think this is where people get confused with progressive overload. And probably because they get progressive overload being told for them by bodybuilders that don't really have much else going on out of their control as far as just lifting more weights and building muscle goes. If you lift one, like, because people think if they don't lift exactly what's written on the program, or if they don't lift 5% heavier than last week, they're not making progress. But that is absolutely not how it works. You could lift the same weight for the same sets and reps for like months in theory and still be getting stronger because of that movement. And so I think something that people need to sort of, and something I really try to educate my guys that I work one-on-one with is, and even on the programming I have, there's a lot of one set at RPE, let's say anywhere from 7.5 to 9. Maybe in the last week we might go for 9.5, and then the work is done, and that's to give them one good hard set that they can really focus on. But that set is really used to then gauge sets that what weight we're gonna use for the work to come, because then we'll back off 20 to 10 to 20%, and then we'll do the work from there. And I think that allows people to have a target to do more weight. But if you just lift the same weight 3 weeks in a row, you're not getting stronger, because there's so much going on. We already spoken about the fatigue that accumulates over the weeks. So if you're lifting the same weight for the same amount of reps, it could also be going faster. It might not even be going faster. It might be with better technique. You might be moving it better, or you might do it exactly the same speed, same technique, but you've got all of this fatigue that's added in and you're still doing it. That shows to me that you're getting stronger. That shows to me that the training is working. It is having an effect. And that's probably where the reassurance of having a coach either online or in person really does pay off, because that then tells you, no, you are doing enough. Stop freaking out.
Yeah. So absolutely. I mean, you've got the skill element. So, at the end of the day, strength is a skill as well, whatever movement you're executing, bench, overhead press, whatever. So that you might be refining that and becoming better at that. Like you said, another variable is speed. So you might be performing it quicker, and then your RPE in theory would go down if you're performing it quicker. And then, like you said, you've got the progressive overload. Super important. You need that to progressive overload, but you have to look at the week globally and go, so you're doing this 120 kilogram squat for your 3 sets of 5, let's say, week 1, and then week 2 you were still there, but week 2 you added 10 sprints on the Monday, the day before you squatted. So there's your progressive overload there, and your RPE was actually down to squats. That's fantastic. So it's not just a case of come in and add extra reps or add a little bit of weight. It can be, sometimes it should be, but it's definitely not always the case, especially as you get closer to the competitive season, in that late preseason phase. Absolutely right.
Yeah. So as we get into the season, last time we spoke, I think, or maybe even the first time uh, we spoke about in-season training and particularly what we can get out of training, like right close to game day. I think we were talking about training the day before game day, but that could also include game day, like as like a primer type workout.
Mm.
Is that something that you're still doing with your team and plan on doing this season?
Yeah, it's something that we researched. Did my master thesis on that, and did it here with the guys at the rugby club. Everyone was involved, so we looked at it across a whole squad, and we found that primers are so individual, so it doesn't significantly affect performance. Now you go, well, what is rugby performance, and how do
I was
you
actually
get
literally going to ask that question. Yeah.
what is rugby performance, and for what role and what are the KPIs, etc. Um, so we were looking at just physical performance to keep things, and this is a hole in the research, I suppose, but to keep things more simple for the research. But basically, what state were the guys in mentally and physically before they went out and played a rugby game? And we found, mixed results. So the people that like to do primers, they were at their best physically and mentally. The players that don't like to do primers, they were just the same as they would be without primers. Obviously, we did a
So
control
they
as
didn't
well.
go down.
Didn't go down. No, no.
Okay.
Um, if any, so primary, so that's a conversation that I have with guys when it comes to game day. Last year we had, so it was 2 years ago we did that. Last season we had three guys that wanted to come in and do primers, and I'm going, okay, well, is it a primer you want to do where we need to have a bit of intensity in that, and we need to do that 6 hours before we play. We don't want to do that 3 hours before we play, for example. Some guys will say, no, I want to do just, I feel good if I do it 3 hours before. Okay, well, what does that look like? You're not doing a primer. You're coming in and doing a bit of mobility and a bit of opening yourself up, and then going in and having the team pasta, and then getting ready to play. That's not a primer. That's just your game day process, and that's amazing if that's what makes you feel good. Um, but yeah, so primers I'm totally open to. I think people should experiment with it to see how they feel on preseason. Preseason friendlies are a great time to try it. Um, Personally, I like to do an activity in the morning that stimulates the CNS before I go and compete when I was competing and grappling. And that does have, for me, both uh, physiological, perhaps because I didn't test it on myself, but with my guys, there are some guys respond and some guys don't respond. But also psychologically, it's almost something that helps me kind of get set, and that's from a personal standpoint. But from the rugby player's point of view, I think people should experiment with it and just gauge how they feel mentally and physically before. I mean, we had guys running PBs, some guys on grass, 30 meters before a game, um, who came in and did the sprint protocol. We had a weights protocol, a sort of weights and plyometric protocol, and just a sprint, an acceleration protocol, let's call it. And the fast guys responded well to the acceleration protocol. There's different things in the research. There's different protocols such as like 6RM squats, going up to 3RMs. But I'm gonna, I just don't want a guy doing a 240 kilogram for three trap bar deadlift 6 hours before he plays. It's just risky. Similarly,
Mm.
I don't want guys to do 40-meter sprints 6 hours before a game. Again, it's just risky. So we did 10-meter accelerations, less risk for the old hamstrings. And we can. Sprinting I'm not saying the sprinting is risky for the hamstrings, because my point of view is and in the research now, a lot of research is coming out. You have to be, can't be afraid of sprinting, because that's how you get faster, and there's also protective mechanisms there. So if you don't do it and then you have to do it in a game, then yeah, there's a high chance that your hammy's gonna strain as soon as you get up to high speed running. So you've got to be able to do it. But on the day of a game, 6 hours before. Like, I just I just couldn't see my guys getting up to true top speed, so enough to actually make it count as a primer, let's say, intense enough. So we stuck to 10 meter accelerations, but definitely something to experiment with. There is good research on primers, but I very much think it's an individual thing, and we didn't have enough data to make it statistically significant to say, oh, protocol 1 worked for everybody, protocol 2 didn't, etc. So that was kind of, sometimes you do research and you find out what doesn't work.
And there's also still stuff like way out of your control that wouldn't factor in other sports. So, kickoff time being a massive one. So if you one week you kick off at 6 p.m, the next week you kick off at 1 p.m, like that's two different situations where you'd have to utilize different protocols kind of no matter what.
Absolutely. Bus journeys, we're fortunate their kickoff times are pretty set, but you've got different home games, different an away game that's like a 6 hour bus or it's a flight. Mm-hmm. We were in Sardinia last year, and we flew on the morning of the game. We did a little, let's call it a get off the bus kind of. I wouldn't even call it a primer because it wasn't that
like a flush.
Yeah, like kind of like a flush. Also, just to wake up the mind as well with the ball in hand and a little couple games. But despite all that, guys still reported having heavy legs. So it was just a case of like, look, you're here now, mate. Get on with it, buddy. Here's a bit of sugar. Off you go, son. Because at the end of the day, you can try everything, but as you say, life can throw you curveballs sometimes.
And do you find that, or did you find, should I say, that so any sort of primer protocol anyway was more, well, it was almost entirely geared towards improving that exact day's game day performance? Because the way I look at, I use primers quite interchangeably with lots of things that definitely aren't primers.
Yeah.
But it's just a way for me to sneak in some extra training during the week for people that, definitely people that aren't full-time, but even people that are full-time that have to manage their recovery so well around intense training sessions that they need to be peaked for, and obviously, of course, games that they need to be peaked for, and everything else that they're already fatigued from. I use it as just a way to get some extra stimulus in at some point during the in-season week, where it can be hard because lots of people come to me and they always take Sunday off anyway because day after the game. Oh, okay, thanks for watch. They always take the day off after the game day. They don't like to train the day before game day. You've obviously got game day itself. So now what we've done is we've condensed all sort of training stimulus from a 7-day week to 4 days. Mm-hmm. And I think that's in itself is quite problematic. What would you give as an opinion on that?
Yeah, look, I think sneaking things in under the guise of primers, the language that we use is based on your tribe, I suppose. So you can, if you look at the research and what they define as a primer, whatever, there's like up to 48 hours in some research papers has been called a primer. For me, that's a training session. And you're just tapering into a game. And look, if you can, everybody's different. If you can have people doing certain things on the Friday then before a game day, some people will be open to that. Some people will be absolutely against it because they need the day off before the game and they're just locked into that, and that's fine. Again, we on the morning of a game, we had guys go up to 80% on trap bar, deadlift, and bench, and guys enjoyed it. It was a way for the guys that were a bit weaker to get stronger. Again, it's just a stimulus. Would I repeat that now? No, because it didn't affect the performance. But is it something that I could take back to coaches and go, look, this 18-year-old here, he might be good for us in these games. I think he should come in if he's gonna be the 19th man in the squad. He can come in and do a bit with me because we've got this data that shows it doesn't really negatively affect. Let me speak with the player. Blah blah blah. I also think there's a good opportunity, and it's something that I've kind of changed over the past few years. So game day +1, typically recovery, get everything right, rest, and that might be absolutely right for someone. But again, if people are open to it, because it always comes back to how much are you willing to, how much do you want to change and how much are you willing to work for it? And are you willing to go through, as we know, go through phases that are quite difficult, manageable? It's not saying you have to feel bad and you're constantly knackered, but like just like life, sometimes it's a series of sprints and you just, focus on that, get that result, relax a little bit, go again. But it might be that game day plus one is not just recovery, but maybe it's an upper body session. Maybe it's a lower body session, like depending on how many tackles you made, how many runs you did. Maybe it was an easier game. Maybe you played 20 minutes, So there's definitely a lot can happen in rugby, and there's a lot of things you can do around that. But it is a challenge if game day, before game day and after game day, they're just untouchable. I think players should be open to exploring, well, if I really want to get better, then they maximize, my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for sure. But, if I've got more time to do more rugby, focus on Tuesday. If I don't go to the gym on Tuesday, I just do my speed warm up, then rugby. Where am I getting my upper strength? Well, actually, I can do or upper power or upper strength on Friday, and it won't affect my game day performance, negatively. So, yes, I think that's where we come in, isn't it? Just using our experience, using the research, having conversations, and finding out what works best for each person.
Yeah, it sort of ties into what we were saying before about not needing to pay attention to your body in the gym as well, not needing to worry about like killing yourself and push yourself every week. Like, it's some of those days like are needed every now and again, they come about, but obviously if that's every single gym session, of course you're not going to be able to do that game day -1 or game day +1.
Yeah.
But actually, if you're talking about, just getting a decent stimulus, there's no reason that none of those can be done. I've started doing a lot with people that are open to it. Like Sunday sometimes ends up being one of our harder conditioning days, just because, it's always Sundays. Just because we're already like prepared for a bunch of fatigue that was going to come from the game anyway. So why not just, if those legs are already kind of heavy, just use that as already extra fatigue, so that sort of limits the forces that we can produce, and therefore the injury risk or the overtraining risk, etc. And actually then what we're doing is we're using that fatigue as to enhance the aerobic benefits that we're going to get out of it, and get used to working on heavy legs as well, but without creating without the hours of extra hard conditioning beforehand to then like get a better stimulus. And then we're already gearing it up as in on Mondays to slowly ramp into the week anyway.
Okay.
And then the other thing that I think that we touched on way earlier in the podcast is you mentioned it sort of offhand, but I think this is something that a lot of amateur rugby players need to hear. Is you said we take Wednesday off like most pro, if not all pro clubs. Like a lot of amateurs, Wednesday's like their hardest session. And that's even more suspect when we're training Tuesday and Thursday, and then we're sandwiching that with our hardest gym session, just because, Monday they're not feeling quite ready for it. Tuesday they've got rugby training, so they either don't have time or aren't willing to go to the gym because of worried about being fatigued. So then they feel like Wednesday they're the freshest, when in actual fact, that is really hard. Whereas if you're breaking up your week from, you have a hard little peak on the Tuesday, you have Wednesday off, and then you go for a peak again on Saturday, I feel like that gives a much more even stimulus throughout the week, because it's not only just the 4 days of training that restricts you, it's those 3 days that you don't train. So, you wouldn't, I'm trying to think, you wouldn't do any other sort of journey or thing that you'd want to progress by doing that. Like, you wouldn't go to school for 2 months and then take 2 months off and then go back. You would go Monday to Friday and then take Saturday, Sunday off, and then go Monday to Friday. You keep going like that. Or, any program that doesn't include, or any program really that we're not thinking about rugby, you'd want to spread the stimulus as evenly as you can through the week, so that you're continually allowing your body to make progress. Whereas if you're sandwiching it in those 4 days, and you're not just spending those 3 days recovering from the training, you're spending, like, that Saturday is potentially your most intense day of the week. So yeah, I don't know. I've ended up going on a bit of a ramble there, but
yeah, no, it was quite true. I mean, amateur players, I suppose, need to be okay with taking time off, and I suppose the guys that you get are the guys and girls that are most motivated to actually train, so they want to train. I mean, same with me. So my online guy on Sunday, we were chatting, and he ended up, because he works in pro rugby, and so it's very busy. He missed Friday's session. He had a rugby team session himself on with his club on Saturday, and he wanted to do his Friday session on Sunday because he was like, "Nah, I feel good," and I listened to him. He was a bit croaky. Maybe they had a bit of a good sand dunes run, and then they sort of maybe had some team bonding with a couple of beers. And I just said to him, "Look, mate, like, you'll be able to go in and do your Sunday session. That's amicable. That's great. However, it's not about if you can do that session. It's about, can you recover from that session in time for Monday? Because on Monday, I need you to be hitting 165 squat to your medium box. I need this speed, blah, 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 blah." And with that change, reframing it that way, like, can you recover from it? It was supposed to be on Friday. You want to do it on Sunday. I like that mindset. Get every session done. But, like, will that affect your next week training? And, yes, it would have been fantastic to do it on Friday. Didn't happen. Let's not push that to Sunday. Let's, like, think about next week. Can you come into Monday and attack X, Y, and Z, your targets for that? And he was like, "Okay, I'll just go for a recovery walk and I'll attack Monday." So yeah, I think we get probably the people that want to work hard, and half of our job is just letting them know, listen, let's organize your training like this if you want to have the best performance you can. Like, obviously, I want you to progress on X, Y, and Z athletic markers whilst having the best rugby performance you possibly can. So allow me to help you do that. Let's figure out what works best for you.
Yeah, and more often than not with these people, more work isn't the answer to do that. It's actually just being pragmatic with it, not trying to get the most out of every single week, but getting enough out of every single week that you can continually progress. It's you've always got to pay the piper eventually, right? So that's I find myself saying that all the bloody time, because it works in any instance. You can burn yourself to the ground with, like, work, but then eventually you're going to put yourself to a point where you can't do any more work in the gym or actually with work. You have to there has to be some time where you actually allow yourself to get back to normal, and so if he does that session on a Sunday, then we roll into next week. Maybe next week you can even then just keep making for it, but eventually that one session, squeezing it in for no reason, is still, like, you've missed it on the Friday. That's fine. You're never going to get that back, no matter what you try and do to make up for it. That better just to leave it as that lost one there, rather than trying to continually recompensate.
Yeah, for
sure. So yeah, I was going to ask you anything that you've changed your mind on. We've already clearly touched on quite a few things. Is there anything else? Because I know I sent you these questions way ahead of time. So is there anything else that sprung to mind when you saw that question?
Yeah, the first thing, the new thing that we're bringing in, I guess it's old but new, is the Flywheel training technology, which I haven't so much changed my mind on, but something we can, if you want to discuss. But probably in the last couple of years, the thing I've changed most about my mind on, or programming, it reflects on my programming, is in that sort of older group of players that are still got some years left of playing, and good rugby players, but I stopped looking at just rugby performance and physical adaptations that I want, and started to think about what will life look after rugby, and how will they move, and basically taking it to a different place in my programming. Maybe they'll have less volume and intensity in certain exercises, even though I'm sacrificing getting an adaptation there. provided I feel like it's not going to affect their rugby performance, and educating them a little bit, or letting them know that it's funny because you go through, young athletes. You need them to move well, so you need them to create stability in key exercises or key movement patterns, let's say, and then they gain the stability, and then they make those movement patterns look good. So then you add load because they've got stability now, and everything's like very good. But ultimately, you want them to turn back to the point where they can solve problems and not be robots. Now, at the start, you need them to move almost like robots at the start, because you got a kid trying to do a lunge and he's wobbling about like Bambi, and you need to like make it okay. You're on train tracks. Just step back, go down, come up, good. And I think as we go through the journey, and of course, rugby takes care of a lot of staying open because you have to use your body in many different ways. But for example, I'm thinking about props, like their roles very specific. Their back, the sporting adaptation that they have for a lifetime of scrumming, and also what's necessary is that their back's rigid. Like no one's moving that. That's a good thing for a prop. But and having good hip mobility and stuff. But we know that the back's supposed to, you should be able to flex and extend the spine. So, towards the sort of, in that transfer group, I suppose, I have started rethinking about how I program, where I place the emphasis at different times of the season of what they need to do. You mentioned knees over toe guys at the start. I've watched a couple of his videos on YouTube, and he's an interesting guy. But there are a couple of points that he makes on certain videos, and I've gone, yeah, actually, do you know what? Like that's so true. We should be able to get into that position without it being sore or whatever on certain exercises. And so definitely changed my mind on a couple of things about programming sort of the twilight year rugby players, or the guys that are enjoying the last maybe 4 years of their career.
Yeah, I think with those, like that segment of players, with you, it's worth clarifying that these would have been like, these are lads that have been training that night. It's 10 years ago it'd be different, because some of these people would have been in their 20s when they actually started taking the gym seriously because the game changed. Now we're not getting anyone like that. Like anyone our age, or my age, 35 and above ish, like, or even in their 30s, they've been, if they're a serious rugby player, if they're semi-professional, professional, more than likely they've been taking their gym seriously. And if they haven't been taking their gym seriously, they're physically pretty gifted anyways. So they've got a really good foundation on which they've been playing for 10, 15 years at a high level anyway, reinforcing that foundation. So when you talk about that rigidness of the back and stuff, like, just because now you're going to train the spine through motion or through rotation, and you're going to try and get them some mobility, longevity, etc., that's not going to take away from that rigidness when it needs to be applied, right? Because they've just had so much time in expressing that specific adaptation or physical capability on the pitch. That doesn't just, it's like, I guess it's kind of like riding a bike. You don't just lose that. So then to branch off into other areas, it kind of makes sense, because you've already, you could continue to chase the few extra metrics and, squeeze a little bit out of the strength or the power and try and hit a PR. But whether that's going to give them a return on the pitch is potentially questionable, versus if they're just moving about through life a little bit better, they're enjoying their training in the gym a bit better, because they're seeing where it's going to pay off later. Like, I think that's a really solid idea, to be honest. Now that's going to be different. Now this is where because I'm just going to clarify this, because I know I've got a few of the older athletes that I work with that will be listening to this. That's going to be different for those people than it is for people that have taken up rugby later, or have taken the gym up later to support their rugby to continue to play. Because I know I've worked with a few athletes that, they played rugby forever, or they stopped playing rugby and then they came back and they're only really going back in the gym, past their 30s because they know that that's what they need to do to continue to play, either to stay injury free or to continue to play at their best, or even they've gone in the gym with a health focus, and rugby, performing better at rugby then gives them that extra motivation. Those people might still be better off at chasing those numbers in a way that's still sustainable and still potentially supports the mobility, etc. But there's still a lot to be gained there on basically all ends of the spectrum, and they won't have had those years of we continue to use your scrum example of getting your head smashed in and being surrounded by 15 other people that are all pushing as hard as they can, and all that force is going through your spine. Like, you just haven't had that time, so you don't have to worry about what that might happen or what the cost of that might be later down the line.
Yeah, so the training age is slightly different from someone that's been in it and doing it week in and week out. I think especially good for players that are sort of towards the end of their career. Obviously, getting the best out of them on game day, keeping them excited about training is sort of progressing, having something that they can progress, but also bringing in the fact that, right, you need to go down and pick your kid up from this position, and you need to be comfortable doing that, or just various different life situations that come up. And it's not that you train for that, but it's just like, you're taking an extra 5 minutes at the end of the workout on this exercise, where that kid goes away and blasts his shoulders with lateral raises. Do you know what I mean? It's just we're talking about a small percentage, but certainly, again, coming back to the accumulation effect, week on week, that builds up time. Your body changes, and you have tolerance to these different positions. So, yeah,
definitely. So, all right, talk to me about the flywheel. What have you been experimenting with, or what are you looking to experiment with? Because I do think, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I'd like to do a whole podcast module on this potentially, like in a couple years, when I do think it's going to be something that is starting to become everywhere because of what a useful piece of kit it can be, and already is for a lot of people, but it's just not as accessible. But if it is accessible, it potentially, from what I've seen as well, it can be like absolutely revolutionary, right?
Can be. It's like any other tool. It's when and where and for who is it appropriate. And you could say for everyone, but that's going to depend on your coaching philosophy, your philosophy towards strength and conditioning. So yes, we're going through a familiarization phase just now. That's really important. So the flywheel is different from weights, because obviously you're working with the inertia of a disc as opposed to load and gravity.
Could you quickly explain kind of what it is for those that haven't heard of this and can't really picture it in their head?
Yeah, so let's stick with the squat example, or RDL, whatever. Basically, you're attached to a rotating disc. So you can have various weights of discs, various thickness and weights, and you're on this platform, box, whatever, and you got, maybe setup would be similar to a belt squat, for example. If people know that, you're harnessed in over the shoulders or via the belt squat, and you're attached to this rotating disc. Okay, you spin the disc, and the more the disc will pull you down, and you'll come back up. And the more effort you put in, the harder it is, essentially. So if you go really light and high, then you won't be producing much force. But the more you try and push into it, the more that it's going to pull you down. So you've got that eccentric phase is really is so different from weights. You really have to control it, and that's why you have to have a familiarization phase, because everyone's so used to, going down controlled with the back squat, and then popping back up as fast as they can. But it's a completely different sensation because you're working with a rotating disc. Now, there's a couple of differences there's a lot of differences to weight training. One critique of it would be the range of motion. You have the technology that you can see the exact range of motion, same as you're using velocity-based training now. You can get not just the velocity or the power or whatever, but you can also say, oh, that rep was 18 centimeters, that rep was 19, etc. So you can set that on the flywheel. But I think range of motion is always going to be best off a goblet squat, a front squat, a back squat. Let's say you can get all the way down. So we're going through a familiarization phase. We're going to bring it in because there's lots of research. I mean, flywheel technology has been around for a long time, but the last 20 years, let's say, the last 2 decades, it's become more and more popular in the athletic population, football, handball in Europe, multi-directional sports. There's been research on rugby, but academy rugby players from a Premier team in England, I can't remember which team, that suggests it's very useful for improving power in comparison to traditional weight training. It's different. There's constant tension, whereas on a back squat, let's say you have, that you do your rep, you come up, you reset, rebrace, go back down. So there's not constant tension on the quads. And yeah, we'll be looking at research as to traditional weight training, strength training, compared to flywheel training over an 8-week period, with 33 guys. Let's say maybe because we're in preseason, maybe 5 will perhaps drop out because, I don't know, hopefully touch wood, nothing happens. But as the contact builds up, maybe someone rolls an ankle and they're out for 2 weeks. So yes, it's something that we had access to 6 years ago when I started. However, if you've got what I would have needed was like 8 of the platforms, because I have 8 areas that my guys can squat. And when you're working with large numbers, you guys got to come on and come off. You might have 4 guys at a squat station, maybe 3 guys. And if you've got like 16 in the gym, you can't just have one tool. You have to have space. And also, again, going back to that early foundational work, like anyone, your gran could jump on, like, let's say, a squat platform that's flywheel and perform squats to her range of motion and get good stimulus from it. Okay, because her range of motion is her range of motion, but you always want your guys to be able to have access to full mobility and full range of motion. So it's not somewhere I would start training with. Be like, okay, this is your training, whatever. It'd be like, you're going to go through your key movements and get good at them. And then when we're focusing on strength, hypertrophy, or power, you can use flywheel for. But I need you to, and that's good, and we'll use that for a period of time. But if, I say to you, go and hit like an empty barbell overhead squat, full range of motion, and you're 18 years old and you're in our program, you should be able to do that, provided you've not just come off the back of a whatever injury, okay? And then you go, okay, hit 5 reps with 60 kilograms. Again, you should be able to do that if you're coming through a system that accounts for full range of motion, progressive overload, not from week to week, but over the years. So yeah, I think there's going to be more and more research. Hopefully I get to contribute to that as well. And definitely something I'm happy to talk about, share about, whatever we find, just like the primary research. The primary research was, hey, it's an individual thing. We tried it. We tried this protocol. If I had to do primary research again, I would change the protocols to explore which ones are optimal, if any. And for the flywheel, same thing. To get through the research process, it's obviously you have to be really rigid on, okay, we're going to do this protocol, 8 weeks, and try that intervention and see if one is better than the other for my particular group of guys that are in late phase preseason. Is when they'll be building into games. They'll have games during that period. When I use it, as an aging gentleman myself, TJ, you almost, as a lifetime someone that's been doing compound lifts, you almost feel guilty because, and this is one of the great things about it, because you come off, you got this, maybe you've done 10 reps or whatever, or 5 reps. You can use it the same way you'd use anything else. The 10 reps I'm doing just now, and you get a really huge pump in the legs, but you feel nothing on through your core or lower back. So if you do 10 reps on your squat, you're like, afterwards, you're like, oh yeah, had a good workout, yep. Yep, I can feel that. After this, you're like so fresh, and there's a potentiation effect as well. It's almost like you're doing light banded box squats, is how I the same sensation. It's not the same how it looks and the mechanism, but the sensation after. But that's really advantageous to some rugby players, especially in season, because you've loaded the legs, you've got the power output, you have all the data because it's connected to the tablet, and you get the eccentric force and the concentric force. So if you're interested in that, you can use it, or you can just use it without it. But afterwards, guys have got a good power stimulus in the legs, and they feel really, really fresh and able to go and run around and do whatever. So I'm excited about trialing it. I know the advantages of it, based on the research, and we're going to be looking at acceleration. One of the research that hasn't been done in rugby is change of direction. So we're looking at the pro agility test as well, and of course we'll be looking at RSI, mid-thigh pull, and CMJ. Based on the research, it suggests that should go up more than traditional weight training. However, when you look at the research, you try to get the exact program that was done. You have to kind of email the authors sometimes. It's like, did you guys? So that was your strength protocol. That was your flywheel training protocol. But did you do any jumps? Because if you're working with rugby players, you're gonna have jumps in there. So like we've got it all planned out, and I'm really excited. What if it's implemented in a real 8-week block with rugby players that are squatting, running, jumping. This is their weekly volume on with the GPS, the high speed running, etc. And this is what happened. I think that hopefully will inform other rugby S&C coaches whether they want to bring it in with their teams or not. Beyond just what it was traditionally, and this is kind of what happens. This is what happened with, and I'll shut up after this one, TJ. But if you go way back to machines and resistance training machines, the techno gym, and all that stuff, years and years and years ago, that was brought in to rehab patients initially, and then bodybuilders took over, and then it's obviously a great way to build muscle, etc. The same thing with Flywheel. It started with like sort of a rehab focus because it's great for that. You can see your balance, etc. But then, of course, the athletic population got hold of it in the last 2 decades, I suppose, and we're like, hey, this eccentric overload is really useful for change of direction and athletes that need to be cutting and things like that. So let's study it. And and now it's something that we want to investigate for ourselves as well.
Yeah, I think it's got a huge upside that is a good few years before we really figure out how deep that can be. But I do go as far as saying the potential for it could be absolutely massive, because it takes out, we spent a good deal of this podcast talking about, RPE, how you're feeling, how to auto-regulate your training. All of a sudden, if you can put it on and they're, you're talking about like a basic flywheel, they're doing these, is it tonal? There's that new technology coming out where it's attached to like a wall, but then you can fold it down and make it like a a normal flywheel on the floor as well, or eccentric K-box thing.
Yeah. K-box is one supplier. We go with Desmotech, who are actually based in Biella, so it's amazing. And they have the V line, which can be placed on a wall very easily. You can almost use it like a portable cable machine. So fantastic.
Yes.
However, it's got the flywheel so it's a different sensation because the cable wheel, you're doing your external rotations. On a cable, you get to there, you kind of lose the tension
because
it's
awkward.
Yeah.
In a good way.
So they have the portable. We have that. You can attach it anywhere. You can attach it to a rugby post. I'll send you the link after this because you'll see a video demo of what we have here. And of course, then you have the in the ground or the platform, just like a force platform, I suppose, which you can do squat, RDL, lunge, any exercise you want, really.
Right. So this is where I think it's like potentially game changing. It could be the new. I mean, unfortunately, it's 4 or 5 years too far away from everyone being stuck in their homes and looking at this. But I know a good few people that use it, and like they say they think this is going to be like potential for what every gym almost could look like, because if you rig it up properly and you get each movement how you can, there's obviously going to be some nuanced movements, or there's going to be things that won't quite work, but it can really cover a lot of bases. And like you say, it actually doesn't feel as horrible or it feels weirder, I guess. But it doesn't feel as horrible as like sort of contorting yourself around a barbell, doing different movements that, the force curve doesn't quite match the muscle. And they think this, or I can understand why they see that this could literally be the future of training, but it's quite far off because there's so many little kinks to work out and validate, I guess. So I guess watch this space.
Yeah. I think it's going to be gyms will, pro teams are already using it. It's been shown to be super effective. It's going to be in gyms. It'll just get there later, like everything else. First at rehab, then
Yeah.
athletes use it. After athletes use it, then gyms start to get involved. Like your commercial gyms, they'll start to get it. Super useful, super effective. Already been proven. I'm sure it'll continue. There'll be evidence that just keeps coming out more in specific populations like rugby. The traditional strength training is here to stay. I mean, deadlift, squat. There's so many advantages to organizing your body in a way where you have to brace through the trunk, you have to align everything correctly. Belt squat, for example, you could do a belt squat, even just let's leave alone flywheel training. You can do a belt squat in a sort of kyphotic posture, whereas in a squat, you're kind of forced into this position. And if you can't get there, you do a different exercise. Maybe you're doing Bulgarians and you're focusing on staying upright with the dumbbells. So traditional training, weight training is absolutely here to stay. But absolutely, I think we're going to see more and more flywheel training coming through. And yeah, I think that's going to be exciting.
Cool, man. Right, where can people find your YouTube, your website, etc.?
So I'm at rugbystrengthandconditioning.com. I will be putting out more blog posts. In fact, my next blog post is going to be on flywheel training over the next week. So if people are interested in that, they can check it out and stay tuned on what we're doing at Biella Rugby Club, because I'll update the blog on how things went. And of course, I'm at YouTube at Coach FMT. So you can find me there. You can find information around rugby strength and conditioning, speed, power, little example programs, niche topics like velocity-based training. Eventually, once we've done this study, flywheel training. So those are kind of the main things. Instagram, I suppose, Coach FMT as well. So yeah, if anyone wants to reach out, you can find me there.
Awesome, mate. It's been a pleasure having you on. I'll get you back on and we'll discuss about how the flywheel training experiment went on.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I look forward to it.
Thanks for coming.